Protesting seems to be all around us in this current day. From students protesting college funds going to Israel by hosting encampments, to people protesting outside of the White House for the right to choose, civil disobedience truly is everywhere. But honestly, it's really easy to become desensitized after seeing a 24/7 news feed of protesting seemingly every issue all of the time. After all, protesters aren't powerful lawmakers or socially inept tech millionaires. Can ordinary people truly wield enough power to make lasting change? In response to this pretty valid question, Griffin and I turned to the most prolific activist I know, my great aunt Noelle.
What is your name?
Noelle Harradine.
How old are you?
75.
Where were you born?
Rochester, New York.
How long have you been involved in activism?
Since 1967.
What did you do? What was the thing in 1967 that got you really into it?
The first thing that I did when I was in college, we lived in a dorm, and the dorm had rules. You had a curfew, you had to sign in and out, you had a dress code on Sundays because parents might visit. And we protested. We went down to the dean's office, and the boys all brought their ties, the girls brought their bras and pantyhose, and we draped his house with them and said, we're not going to do it anymore. So we succeeded. In the next year, we had no curfews, we had no signing in, and we had no dress code. So that was my first successful protest.
Did you go to college?
Many places. The first 2 years was SUNY Cobleskill, State University of New York. And from there, I went to Oneonta. And from there, I went to Oswego. And from there, I've been to 2 colleges in Connecticut, 2 in Oklahoma. So I've been all over the place.
What movements were you involved in and over what time period?
Oh, well, that's part of my slideshow for you. Hang on, I'm looking at it right here. In the spring, in 1964, I was 14, and there were race riots 10 miles from my house, 4 days of race riots in Rochester, New York, which was really scary, but I was 14 and didn't really mean a whole lot to me. And then we watched Kennedy get shot, and we watched all these things, and I'm still not really understanding it as a big picture. But then in 1968, I was dating a young Black man, and I mentioned his race only because it's pertinent to the story. And we were up in a diner, and on the TV above the counter, they said Martin Luther King had been shot. Now, I had heard of Martin Luther King, but I really didn't appreciate who he was or what the whole thing was about. And when I told Kenny and my other friends this, when I came back to the table, the reaction was horrifying. They just cried. Kenny got on the payphone, called his mother, cried. I'm getting upset thinking about it. And that awoke in me as to, oh, wow, I live in a bubble and I got to do something. So that's when I really got involved in the civil rights.
The civil rights movement was a social movement with the primary goal of ending racial segregation, primarily between 1946 and 1968. The movement partially began due to the experience of Black soldiers in World War II who fought in segregated militaries overseas in the name of democracy and returned home determined to secure the rights of full citizenship. The civil rights movement employed strategies such as lawsuits, mainly led by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, which sought to undermine the legal foundations of Jim Crow laws in the South, boycotts like the famous Montgomery bus boycott sparked by the arrest of Rosa Parks, and other forms of community organization like the Freedom Summer of 1964, which was a voter registration drive aiming to increase the number of registered Black voters in Mississippi. One figurehead of community organization was none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who led the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Birmingham, Alabama. The SCLC launched a large-scale campaign of strikes, sit-ins, and other forms of peaceful protest to fight back against the unjust segregation policies in the city. Dr. King went on to speak at the March on Washington on August 28, 1963, where he delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
The March on Washington was the largest nonviolent civil rights demonstration that the U.S. has ever seen. Unfortunately, 5 years later, on April 4, 1968, Dr. King was shot and killed while standing on a balcony outside the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. James Earl Ray, a fugitive who escaped from a Missouri prison in 1967, later confessed to the assassination and was sentenced to a 99-year prison sentence.
And then again, this is 68, and then 68 to 69, everything broke open. Women's rights, civil rights, voting rights, the Earth Day, the first Earth Day. So I've been involved in all of those from a young age, about 18, 19.
What are you personally most proud to have been involved in?
Give me a sec. Definitely the Earth movement, and the women's rights, gay rights. I think I love them all. And I'm panicking now because they're all being taken back. So I'm back out there protesting again.
Yeah, you said you were at a protest on Wednesday. What was that about?
Wednesday was for healthcare, and then next week is No Kings. We do like one a week in Canandaigua.
What movement do you think defined you as a person, or define the era that you were involved in activism, like in the...
Again, they all helped build my character. Well, and it changed over the years, obviously, as movements changed. And probably the anti-Vietnam War, that was a big one. Lost a lot of friends, and that'd probably be the most pertinent one.
The Vietnam War started as a fight between the Southern Vietnamese and Northern Communist Vietnamese. The United States, allegedly concerned with communism spreading globally, started deploying troops in 1965 under President Lyndon B. Johnson. The war slowly but surely became more and more unpopular as many young men started to die under circumstances that weren't exactly clear to the public. On February 27, 1968, newscaster Walter Cronkite, who had just returned from reporting in Vietnam, famously started the mainstream turn against the war by stating that, quote,
"It seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. To say that we are closer to victory today is to believe, in the face of the evidence, the optimists who have been wrong in the past."
President Johnson was full of despair, claiming that, quote,
"If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America."
end quote. The public outrage was even greater after the My Lai massacre, where on March 16, 1968, 500 unarmed Vietnamese men, women, and small children were slaughtered by U.S. soldiers. I guess I don't super know a lot about how, the logistics of, how the draft worked and stuff, but you said you were there for when that was happening. What was that like?
Well, what was happening is prior to the lottery, which I think was in 69, people who didn't have to go and be drafted were college people, rich people with connections. So a majority of the men that were fighting in the war were poor, working class people. So they decided to make it fair. They'd have this lottery where they would pull numbers, almost like a bingo thing, and they would pull your birth dates out. I'm trying to find my slide here because they'd pull your birthday out to see who was number one. And if I was a male, I was number 100. Jude, if you were a male, you were 222. So you were safe from the war. I wasn't.
The Vietnam draft took place from 1969 to 1973. Out of the 27 million eligible men, 2.2 million were drafted. About 30% of these men would not return home. Some sought refuge in college or parental deferments. Others intentionally failed aptitude tests or otherwise evaded. Thousands fled to Canada. The politically connected sought refuge in the National Guard, and a growing number engaged in direct resistance. Anti-war activists viewed the draft as immoral and the only means for the government to continue the war with fresh soldiers. Ironically, as the draft continued to fuel the war effort, it also intensified the anti-war cause. The selective service system was set up to target those of a lower socioeconomic class, but of course no one was really safe. It relied on the birthday system, where each date was assigned a number between 1 through 366 for leap year, detailing how soon you'd enter the war. In the first year, numbers 1 through 195 were summoned away.
It was really horrifying because I was with about 20 people in the room. maybe half men, half women. And hearts were broken. People were sobbing because they were number 4 and number 5. And that meant, guess what? If you were able-bodied, obviously. So anyhow, the draft lottery happened, and now I understand why, that it was more fair to everybody. But at the time, being with my friends who had low numbers, it was pretty devastating. So your birthday, what was the first birthday? If you were born, I don't know. Griff, when's your birthday?
My birthday is November 12th.
November 12th. You were number 66, sorry.
Ooh.
That's not good.
No. So that's how it went. They just drew up birth dates and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see your slideshow if we could figure out how you could share your screen. I know I'm awful at Zoom.
There it is. Okay, can you see that?
Nice.
Yes, we can.
Howdy doody.
Yes.
Okay, hang on and let me start the slideshow. Okay, H5, my first protest. My sister wanted to watch Howdy Doody. I wanted to watch Captain Kangaroo. And so we compromised and Mom had to put us on a calendar when every other day you got to watch your TV show. So that's my first. Then when I was 10, Ruby Bridges, the first African-American child integrated in schools. We watched that on TV at school. It was quite, again, enlightening. In my high school, we had one Black person, and he was an exchange student from Ethiopia. That's it. So that's the bubble I lived in. I got to see the first man in space. I got to see the first man that orbited the Earth, John Glenn. Then President Kennedy gets shot, and we're in high school. I'm in 9th grade, and they come over the speaker and say that the president had been shot, and it was just like, wow.
President John F. Kennedy was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald on 11/22/1963. Kennedy was going on a presidential parade of Dallas, Texas in a convertible limousine, and Oswald was a sniper in an upper-story window. Oswald fired 3 shots, the last one killing Kennedy in a direct hit to the head. Oswald's motives were unclear, as he himself was murdered several days later by nightclub owner Jack Ruby. The whole situation remains suspicious and odd to this day.
Things, you see it on TV. And at this time, there was 2 news shows on a day, one in the morning, which I never watched, and one at night for half an hour. That's it. So we didn't have 24/7 news as to what was going on, just as a side thought. Then watching this live, I saw this live when the man that was accused of Kennedy's assassination was killed by Jack Ruby. And I'm sitting there with my parents and watching this man get shot. Anyhow. Then the Rochester race riots, which I talked to you about, they were just about 10 miles from our house. I used to go down to Baden Street. I was in the Future Teachers of America, and we'd go down to Baden Street in Rochester and work with the inner city kids, and we couldn't do that for about 2 weeks. Okay, in spring, the protests really started up. People were not, the common person was not aware of what was going on. It was pretty much kept a secret. We had lost, I think, 40,000 young men, and we didn't realize that. It just wasn't really talked about in the news. And then I talked about Martin Luther King being shot. And there's Kenny and I watching the funeral. Then Bobby Kennedy gets shot. And again, we're watching this live. He's giving a speech on TV, and this was the president's brother who was shot.
Bobby Kennedy, the younger brother of JFK and the forerunner of the Democratic Party for the presidency at the time, was shot and killed by a man named Sirhan Sirhan on June 5, 1968. This was after Kennedy visited Palestine and showed support for Israel following the Six-Day War in 1967. Deeply angering the Palestinian Jordanian, Sirhan was also a Christian and was anti-Semitic. Having lived his entire life in conjunction with Israeli bombs and weapons before immigrating to the U.S., Sirhan developed an obsession with killing Kennedy, which he eventually did the night of the California primary.
So this is all my psyche. It may not be interesting to you guys, but it's just who I am. Then everything broke loose. From gay rights, no, not gay rights. We didn't talk about that, and that was taboo. Civil rights, women's rights, the war, and earth rights. June of 69, Life magazine finally got gutsy, and they put the pictures and names of 242 men who had been killed in 7 days in Vietnam. 242 men in 7 days. And they put everyone's picture and name in it. And that really got the public going. Then the big peace day in 69, when everybody in the United States just about was protesting the war. Every religion, everybody was just outraged at it all, saying it had to end. Then the draft lottery. That's the number, the dates and stuff that would determine. I don't know who was number one. I remember my friends crying. There's my friends I've lost in Vietnam that I know of, my high school friends. Then Kent State happened. You know about Kent State?
We did do a thing on it.
Okay, that's when the shit hit the fan, excuse me, but did it because we were still in school. So I was in Oneonta, and it's a real farm community, and the farmers said, we're gonna teach those hippies a lesson. We're gonna come up there with our shotguns. So the campus closed down, and we went up to an Adirondack cabin that a friend's parents owned. And I put that screaming woman down there because I kept having nightmares of being shot. It was amazing. But we had planned Earth Day. So we thought, pooey, we're not going to let that ruin us for Earth Day. So we went back and had the very first Earth Day. And it's funny, as I think back, our biggest goal was to stop littering.
Is that
we
you in the photo, or is that just?
Yeah, that's me. Some are real, some are internet, obviously. These are pictures of the different protests. The first one, the second one, and me down there with the voting card are actual photos. The others came from the internet. And then these are friends of mine. The top row are the old friends from years past. I can't move that. And then down here are the same people, but my age that I still contact with. They're a very close group.
That's cute.
Can you believe that's me there? Oh, Lord. And there we are protesting. And someone says to me, why are you still protesting at your age? You're not going to see this. And I said, because I do it for those I love.
That's really cute.
Recognize that picture? So that's it. That's the slideshow I've had fun doing.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much. After what I thought was a pretty good chat and our best attempt at sitting still today, I feel like we finally had an answer to the question that sparked this whole thing, which of course was, can ordinary people make lasting change? The answer I took away from this is yes, but on one condition. You can't get lazy. After so much progress was made in the latter half of the 20th century, it feels like we're going backwards now, with queer rights, Roe v. Wade, Black Lives Matter, and the issue of US dollars going to fund overseas wars yet again. And that's because we got complacent. We reveled in our perceived wins that we forgot to keep fighting for our losses. If my great aunt taught me anything besides how to make apple pie and how to book a plane ticket, it's to never get complacent. Always keep fighting, and after a little while, little victories will turn into larger ones, and big defeats will turn into smaller ones.